That's it. No cider, no apples, no rich scent of spice simmering through a cozy autumn kitchen. Just boiling water, bubbling under the bright studio lights of Meghan Markle's California home. And yet, she smiles into the camera, her tone soft, her eyes gleaming with that familiar Duchess composure, and says the line that will ignite the internet. All you have to do is boil some water. Pause for a second. Boil some water. That's the grand secret behind her new $16 Spiced Cider kit from her struggling lifestyle brand. As ever, no apples, no juice, just hot water and a mesh bag of herbs steeped like tea. A royal recipe reduced to the basics of a kettle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And just like that, the world, especially the online world, erupted. You could almost hear the collective gasp across social media. Tweets poured in. TikToks stitched and duet. YouTubers reacted with sarcasm-laced thumbnails. $16 for hot water? Memes compared Meghan's cider to British tea, but with less flavor. The phrase boiling water trended for hours. It was funny, sure, but it was also devastatingly revealing. Because this wasn't just another celebrity lifestyle flop. This was Meghan Markle, the former Duchess of Sussex, the woman who walked away from royal life to craft her own empire of empowerment, authenticity, and luxury. And now she was being roasted, pun intended, for a recipe that didn't even include its own title ingredient. But the Royal spark came from someone unexpected, a man who once knew her intimately, not through gossip columns or royal titles, but across a dinner table. The Canadian chef who shared her love of food, conversation, and quiet ambition. His name? Cory Vitiello. And when he saw that viral video, he laughed. Loudly. Reports claim he howled with laughter. That he couldn't contain himself after seeing his former girlfriend, a woman once enamored by the art of real cooking, turn a pot of boiling water into a luxury brand tutorial. The irony was delicious. The symbolism, perfect. But why did it sting so much? Why did his laughter resonate deeper than all the memes and headlines? Maybe because this wasn't just about a failed drink recipe. It was about how far Meghan Markle had drifted, from the grounded, authentic woman Cory once knew, to the carefully polished persona selling relatable luxury online. Let's rewind a little. Imagine Meghan in her pristine California kitchen, the same one featured in her glossy lifestyle videos. The countertops glisten with sunlight, a few designer mugs placed strategically near a vase of peonies. She speaks gently to the camera, in that now familiar voice, half Duchess, half influencer. All you have to do, she says, is boil some water. Simple. Direct. Too simple. As the pot begins to steam, she continues the step-by-step tutorial. Place the pre-packaged spice bag into the pot, let it steep, drizzle in some, as ever honey for a really special note, and finish it off with a cinnamon stick. The camera zooms in on her hand, delicately placing that single stick into the pot, almost ceremoniously. It's calm. It's cozy. It's curated. But it's not cider. And the moment that realization hit viewers, everything shifted. Comments exploded under the video within minutes. Where's the cider? Did she just sell us a tea bag for $16? This woman turned boiling water into a business model. It was brutal, but it was also predictable. For months, Meghan had been trying to reposition her image after his Ever's rocky start. The brand, once teased as a major comeback project, had struggled to gain traction. Critics called it a watered-down goop. Others said it felt tone-deaf and soulless. The Spiced Cider kit was supposed to be the seasonal hit, the one thing to humanize her again. Something simple, warm, comforting. Instead, it boiled over into ridicule. The irony wasn't lost on the people who'd followed Meghan since her acting days, long before her royal transformation. Back then, she blogged about organic recipes, real home cooking, and thoughtful living. She wasn't trying to be a brand. She was one, effortlessly. So what happened? How did someone once praised for authenticity end up being mocked for selling boiled water? That's where Cory Vitiello comes in. Because long before Meghan was a duchess, or even a global celebrity, she was a woman dating a Toronto chef who loved the smell of caramelized onions and Sunday morning espresso. Cory was real. No filters. No palace. Just a chef running a successful restaurant and living for flavor, not fame. They were together for about 2 years. And those close to them say it was serious, intimate, grounded, domestic even. Meghan, between acting gigs on Suits, would spend evenings in his kitchen, learning, laughing, tasting. Friends recall her deep admiration for Cory's passion and his quiet pride in her drive. They cooked together often. Not boiled water, real meals. So when Cory saw that clip, Meghan, standing over a pot of boiling water, calling it spiced cider, it must have felt like watching a different person entirely. The laughter wasn't cruel. It was disbelief. It was almost nostalgic. He knew her when she cared about taste. And maybe, deep down, that's why it cut so sharply. Because it revealed a transformation that even those closest to her couldn't quite reconcile. But let's zoom out. Why does this matter now? Because in 2025, image is everything. Meghan's entire post-royal narrative revolves around redefining herself, on her own terms. After stepping back from royal duties with Harry, she entered a world that demanded constant reinvention. The podcast, the Netflix docuseries, the philanthropic ventures, and now, as ever, each an attempt to merge her old self with her new identity. And yet, moments like this cider video expose the cracks in that glossy armor. They make people question what's real and what's manufactured. The public isn't mocking her for making a drink. They're mocking the disconnect between what she says she is and what she actually does. The woman who once championed authenticity now feels scripted. The woman who once celebrated community now seems isolated in curated perfection. So when Cory Vitiello laughed, it wasn't just at the cider, it was at the illusion. The same illusion millions are now starting to see through. But here's the twist. Cory's reaction wasn't supposed to be public. It leaked through whispers, friends of friends, dinner party gossip, the kind of chatter that always finds its way online. Soon enough, headlines appeared. Meghan's ex Cory Vitiello reportedly laughs at her cider video. Chef X calls Markle's recipe boiled water nonsense. The media ran wild with it. And just like that, the laughter became symbolic. A moment of truth breaking through Meghan's well-oiled PR machine. And if you followed her story at all, you know, nothing infuriates Meghan Markle more than losing control of the narrative. Which is exactly what this story is about. Because beneath the laughter lies something much deeper. A reckoning of image versus substance, of authenticity versus aspiration. Meghan wanted as ever to represent her rebirth, grounded, elegant, attainable. Instead, the spiced cider fiasco made her seem out of touch. And Cory's reaction, his genuine amusement, became the accidental mirror reflecting everything she's tried to suppress. But here's where things get even more interesting. People close to Meghan reportedly claim she was furious when she learned Cory's laughter was being shared. Furious, not because of the teasing itself, but because he, of all people, should have understood her intention. She wanted to show simplicity, to embrace less is more. But to him, it was less is lazy. And that tension between intent and perception is exactly what defines Meghan Markle's public image today. Think about it. She's constantly walking the line between vulnerability and vanity. Every gesture, every product, every post carries the weight of perception. And sometimes, all it takes is a pot of boiling water to tip that balance. Now, imagine being Cory in that moment. Watching the world react. Watching her once again become the center of a storm. Not for royal drama this time, but for a recipe gone wrong. You might laugh too. You might even remember the nights you spent helping her chop onions, tasting sauces, or joking about the absurdities of fame. There's a poetic irony in all of it. The chef who once shared her kitchen now laughs at the woman selling kitchens to the world. The actress who once played a strong, smart paralegal now performs domestic bliss for a camera. The duchess who once commanded palaces now commands comment sections. And yet, here's the question no one's asking. Is Meghan laughing too? Because behind the scenes, she's known to be strategic, always aware of optics. Could this boiled water chaos actually benefit her? Could controversy drive sales? Could mockery turn into free publicity for as ever? Maybe. Maybe that's the brilliance behind the chaos. But maybe it's the beginning of something else entirely. A pattern repeating itself. A cycle of trying too hard, losing touch, and rebuilding again. As the camera pans out on Meghan's video, steam rising from the pot, her voice softens. It's the simplest things that bring the most warmth. And for a fleeting second, she looks genuine. content. Like she believes it. Maybe she does. Maybe, to her, boiling water really is the symbol of simplicity, a reset from the noise. But to the rest of the world, it's something else entirely. It's a metaphor for everything that's gone wrong with her image. Polished, performative, and missing the real ingredient. The cider wasn't the only thing watered down. And that's why this story hit so hard. Because beneath the laughter and the memes lies something much more human. A woman who keeps trying to reinvent herself, in a world that refuses to let her forget what she once was. But if you think Cory's laughter was the end of it, you'd be wrong. It all started with a pot of water. Yes, a pot. Not a cauldron of caramelized apples, not a bubbling vat of mulled cider, not the kind of golden-hued drink that makes autumn Instagram feeds swoon. Just water. Boiling water. And yet, in the hands of Meghan Markle, it became a story that would ripple across social media, news outlets, and even former personal relationships, igniting debate about authenticity, branding, and perception. The video was simple in structure. Meghan stood in her carefully curated California kitchen. The sunlight fell just right across her countertops, giving everything a soft, inviting glow. Every prop, the mugs, the utensils, the honey jar, was deliberately placed. This wasn't a candid, messy kitchen moment. This was a performance. And the performance was titled, in her soft-spoken, Duchess-accented voice, How to Make Spiced Cider with, As Ever. She began by showing the viewer the pot. It was large, sturdy, and clean, bubbling softly on the stove. All you have to do is boil some water, she said, smiling warmly. And she meant it. Literally. That was the main instruction. No additional explanation. No pretense of culinary skill. Just water, heat, and patience. For a casual viewer, the moment might seem harmless, or even wholesome. A celebrity sharing a simple ritual. But it quickly became clear that something about this simplicity felt jarring. The world, conditioned to see Meghan as either royal perfection or influencer chic, wasn't expecting such a literal, almost painfully basic demonstration. Let's pause here. Think about what a pot of boiling water represents in this context. On one hand, it's neutral. It's life-giving. Water is essential to cooking, cleaning, and survival. On the other hand, in the realm of marketing and lifestyle branding, it is laughably mundane. It is the antithesis of sophistication, of the curated lifestyle she is attempting to sell. This contradiction is what made the video so captivating, and why it spread like wildfire. The public wasn't just observing a recipe, they were observing the disconnect between image and reality. They saw a Duchess-turned-lifestyle mogul presenting boiled water as a luxury product. And the reactions were instantaneous. $16 for boiled water, tweeted one user. This is her idea of spiced cider, wrote another, accompanied by a gif of someone dropping their jaw. Memes proliferated, showing Meghan standing proudly over a pot labeled liquid gold or royalty. The internet, as it always does, turned simplicity into satire and satire into a storm. But here's the nuance. Meghan didn't make this video to deceive. She genuinely intended it to be a comforting, approachable tutorial. In her mind, this was relatability, not mockery. She wanted viewers to see that even a former duchess could enjoy simple pleasures, that wellness and warmth don't require complicated steps. The addition of as ever honey and a cinnamon stick was meant to elevate the experience, something small, but intimate, signaling care and intention. Yet perception is reality. And in this case, the public perception quickly skewed toward ridicule. Now, enter Cory Vitiello. Cory's laughter wasn't just a casual chuckle. It wasn't a detached, this is funny social media reaction. It was the laughter of someone who knew her intimately, who remembered her standards in the kitchen, who had spent hours cooking alongside her, and who understood the art of flavor in a way that couldn't be replicated by a tea bag and hot water. To him, watching the video wasn't just funny, it was absurd. And that absurdity highlighted a broader truth. The woman who once cared deeply about authenticity, depth, and craft had transitioned into a form of curated simplicity that bordered on parody. Let's back up a little to understand why that matters. Meghan Markle's brand today, post-royalty, is multifaceted. She is an actress, an activist, a content creator, and an entrepreneur. Each facet requires careful control of public perception. Every video, podcast, or product launch is scrutinized for alignment with her values, wellness, empowerment, and authenticity. And yet, when she presented a spiced cider tutorial consisting essentially of boiling water, that alignment faltered. Audiences were left asking, is this simplicity intentional, or is it a sign of detachment from reality? The moment became emblematic of the tension between aspiration and reality in celebrity branding. For someone selling a lifestyle, particularly one rooted in wellness, sophistication, and relatability, simplicity must still feel aspirational. Boiling water, as the centerpiece of a $16 product, fails on both fronts. It is simple, yes, but not aspirational. And herein lies the irony. Irony, of course, has always been a powerful tool in storytelling. In this case, the irony is multifaceted. On one level, the Duchess of Sussex, who once wielded immense influence over global audiences, found herself at the mercy of viral mockery for something utterly mundane. On another level, her former partner, a chef with years of culinary credibility, witnessed the moment and reacted authentically, laughing at what he perceived as the absurdity of marketing something so ordinary as extraordinary. To understand the deeper context, it's important to reflect on Meghan and Cory's past. In Toronto, before Meghan was a royal or a global influencer, she was dating a man who had built a respected culinary career. Cory Vitiello wasn't a celebrity. He was a professional chef whose passion revolved around flavor, technique, and authenticity. Together, they shared a life where food was central, not as a marketing tool, but as a means of connection. They spent evenings cooking, tasting, experimenting. They celebrated the process, the subtlety of seasoning, the artistry of a well-prepared dish. In contrast, the boiling water tutorial feels almost performative. It lacks the depth, the craft, and the care that defined their shared moments in the kitchen. And that contrast makes Cory's laughter understandable. It is the laughter of someone witnessing a departure from the truth he once knew, from the woman who once embodied meticulous attention to detail in her approach to life and cuisine. Meanwhile, the public reaction only amplified the impact. Social media users dissected every aspect of the tutorial. Some focused on the absence of actual cider. Others mocked the overly simple instructions. Still others criticized the pricing of the kit relative to its contents. The boiling water became symbolic, representing both a literal and metaphorical dilution of substance. This symbolism is critical, because what Meghan Markle experienced with the Spiced Cider tutorial is not unique to her. It is a universal tension between image and authenticity. Celebrities, influencers, and public figures constantly navigate this landscape, balancing the desire to appear approachable with the need to maintain credibility. And when those efforts fail, even small actions, a pot of water, a misplaced gesture, a misunderstood post, can catalyze major reputational shifts. By the time Cory's laughter entered the story, the narrative had already begun to shift. The focus moved from the simple act of boiling water to the relational and symbolic layers beneath it. The laughter was not just a reaction. It became a mirror, reflecting the growing gap between Meghan's intended image and public perception. And yet, despite the ridicule, the video achieved one thing undeniably: engagement. People were talking, debating, sharing, and reacting. In the world of influencer branding, visibility is currency. Even mockery has a value. But engagement alone does not equal credibility. And credibility is precisely what the boiling water tutorial lacked. Let's back up a little to understand why that matters. Meghan Markle's brand today, post-royalty, is multifaceted. She is an actress, an activist, a content creator, and an entrepreneur. Each facet requires careful control of public perception. Every video, podcast, or product launch is scrutinized for alignment with her values, wellness, empowerment, and authenticity. And yet, when she presented a spiced cider tutorial consisting essentially of boiling water, that alignment faltered. Audiences were left asking, is this simplicity intentional, or is it a sign of detachment from reality? The moment became emblematic of the tension between aspiration and reality in celebrity branding. For someone selling a lifestyle, particularly one rooted in wellness, sophistication, and relatability, simplicity must still feel aspirational. Boiling water, as the centerpiece of a $16 product, fails on both fronts. It is simple, yes, but not aspirational. And herein lies the irony. Irony, of course, has always been a powerful tool in storytelling. In this case, the irony is multifaceted. On one level, the Duchess of Sussex, who once wielded immense influence over global audiences, found herself at the mercy of viral mockery for something utterly mundane. On another level, her former partner, a chef with years of culinary credibility, witnessed the moment and reacted authentically, laughing at what he perceived as the absurdity of marketing something so ordinary as extraordinary. To understand the deeper context, it's important to reflect on Meghan and Cory's past. In Toronto, before Meghan was a royal or a global influencer, she was dating a man who had built a respected culinary career. Cory Vitiello wasn't a celebrity. He was a professional chef whose passion revolved around flavor, technique, and authenticity. Together, they shared a life where food was central, not as a marketing tool, but as a means of connection. They spent evenings cooking, tasting, experimenting. They celebrated the process, the subtlety of seasoning, the artistry of a well-prepared dish. In contrast, the boiling water tutorial feels almost performative. It lacks the depth, the craft, and the care that defined their shared moments in the kitchen. And that contrast makes Cory's laughter understandable. It is the laughter of someone witnessing a departure from the truth he once knew, from the woman who once embodied meticulous attention to detail in her approach to life and cuisine. Meanwhile, the public reaction only amplified the impact. Social media users dissected every aspect of the tutorial. Some focused on the absence of actual cider. Others mocked the overly simple instructions. Still others criticized the pricing of the kit relative to its contents. The boiling water became symbolic, representing both a literal and metaphorical dilution of substance. This symbolism is critical, because what Meghan Markle experienced with the Spiced Cider tutorial is not unique to her. It is a universal tension between image and authenticity. Celebrities, influencers, and public figures constantly navigate this landscape, balancing the desire to appear approachable with the need to maintain credibility. And when those efforts fail, even small actions, a pot of water, a misplaced gesture, a misunderstood post, can catalyze major reputational shifts. By the time Cory's laughter entered the story, the narrative had already begun to shift. The focus moved from the simple act of boiling water to the relational and symbolic layers beneath it. The laughter was not just a reaction. It became a mirror, reflecting the growing gap between Meghan's intended image and public perception. And yet, despite the ridicule, the video achieved one thing undeniably: engagement. People were talking, debating, sharing, and reacting. In the world of influencer branding, visibility is currency. Even mockery has a value. But engagement alone does not equal credibility, and credibility is precisely what the boiling water tutorial lacked. So here we are. A single pot of water, simmering quietly on a stove, has become a cultural touchstone. It encapsulates irony, humor, relational tension, and the delicate balancing act of public image. It reminds us that even in the era of meticulously curated personal brands, authenticity, or the appearance of authenticity, remains a fragile commodity. And if you think this is just about a recipe, think again. The boiling water, the cinnamon stick, the honey drizzle, these are symbolic gestures in a much larger story about perception, identity, and expectation. Meghan's intentions were simple: warmth, comfort, simplicity. But the outcome was anything but simple. Because what followed, social media uproar, meme proliferation, and Cory Vitiello's viral laughter, revealed something deeper: the tension between who Meghan Markle wants to be and how the world perceives her. Between the woman who once shared kitchens and quiet meals with a partner and the woman selling luxury kits to a global audience. And that tension is where the story truly begins. Because this isn't just a tale of boiled water. It's a story of expectation, ambition, and the fragile illusion of perfection. It's a story that examines the collision of past and present, personal and public, private laughter and viral spectacle. Every brand tells a story. Some whisper it quietly, some shout it from the rooftops. Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, as ever, was supposed to do both. At least, that was the plan. Designed as a post-royal pivot, a bridge between her former identity as a duchess and her ambitions as a global entrepreneur, as ever promised wellness, authenticity, and everyday luxury. But like many stories that are carefully curated in boardrooms, the reality often strays from the narrative. By the time the Spiced Cider tutorial dropped, the cracks were visible. Critics had already begun questioning the brand's viability. Some called it a watered-down version of Goop, referencing Gwyneth Paltrow's notoriously polarizing wellness empire. Others described it as confusingly packaged optimism, a concept that sounds nice in theory, but is harder to translate into tangible products. And then there were the sales numbers, which reportedly fell short of expectations, leaving insiders scrambling to figure out how to turn vision into revenue. It's worth pausing here to understand why this matters. A brand is not just a logo or a product. It is the sum of perception, marketing, consumer experience, and cultural resonance. For a celebrity like Meghan, it carries an added weight. It must embody her personal narrative, her past as a public figure, and her projected image of refinement and accessibility. When any of these elements falter, the brand itself becomes vulnerable. Consider the Spiced Cider kit. On paper, it seems innocuous. Seasonal products are common, especially in lifestyle branding. The kit included a simple bag of spices, a cinnamon stick, and a small jar of her signature as ever honey. It was designed to be approachable, quick, and Instagram-ready. But the execution missed the mark. Boiling water, the literal foundation of the recipe, became emblematic of what critics called a lack of substance. The product's simplicity, intended as charm, was interpreted as laziness. And in the world of social media, perception is everything. But here's the nuance. Simplicity is not inherently bad. In culinary arts, minimalism can be profound. A perfectly executed dish with just a few ingredients can be transcendent. The problem with Meghan's tutorial was that the execution failed to communicate mastery. The pot of water wasn't an artistic choice. It was a gap between concept and delivery. And audiences noticed. They compared it to standard mulled cider recipes, which traditionally use apple cider as a base, complemented with mulling spices like cinnamon, cloves, and citrus. Her version omitted the cider entirely. The result? A drink that was technically spiced, but not truly cider. The backlash was swift. Social media erupted with critiques and memes. $16 for boiling water became the rallying cry. Influencers and bloggers dissected the video, pointing out the missing elements, questioning the practicality, and debating whether it qualified as a legitimate recipe at all. In marketing terms, the Spiced Cider kit became what analysts call a brand vulnerability, an opening for the public to question credibility, pricing, and intent. And yet, despite the criticism, there was something undeniably strategic about the move. As ever was more than a product, it was a lifestyle statement. Meghan's positioning sought to merge wellness, comfort, and relatability with a subtle touch of luxury. In theory, simplicity can be aspirational if it evokes mindfulness, calm, and effortless living. The problem was the delivery. The tutorial framed simplicity as mundane. The magic, the craft, the sensory experience, those were missing. Cory Vitiello, the Canadian chef who once shared her life intimately, noticed this immediately. His laughter wasn't random. He recognized the difference between curated simplicity and underwhelming execution. For him, it was a reminder of how far Meghan had drifted from the grounded woman he once knew. The woman who spent hours perfecting recipes, understanding flavors, and embracing authenticity. Watching her present boiled water as spiced cider was like watching a caricature of herself perform a ritual she used to embody genuinely. This brings us to an essential question. Why does this ever struggle? There are multiple layers. First, there's the challenge of transitioning from royalty to entrepreneur. Meghan's former identity as Duchess carries immense cultural weight. Public expectations are high, and every move is scrutinized. Consumers expect polish, sophistication, and a tangible connection to her personal narrative. When the product, or its marketing, fails to deliver, the public response is amplified. Second, there's the tension between accessibility and luxury. As ever attempts to be approachable, offering wellness products for everyday use, while also maintaining a premium image. But when the Spiced Cider kit delivers boiled water as its centerpiece, that balance collapses. The product appears overpriced, its narrative hollow. The audience sees not a thoughtfully curated experience, but a literal act of boiling water. Third, there's the branding itself. As ever is built on Meghan's personal values: mindfulness, wellness, sustainability, and inclusivity. These are admirable, but abstract. Translating them into tangible products requires a delicate touch. Every item must tell a story, engage the senses, and convey meaning. The Spiced Cider kit, in failing to include cider, failed to tell that story. It became a literal and symbolic simplification of her brand narrative. And yet, the product exists in a cultural context where perception often outweighs reality. Some critics argue that Meghan's celebrity status alone should carry the brand. They suggest that her fame, her platform, and her storytelling can override shortcomings in execution. But history shows that celebrity alone cannot sustain a brand indefinitely. Without substance, without resonance, without authenticity, even a high-profile launch can falter. It's here that the tension between Meghan and Cory becomes especially interesting. Cory represents a standard Meghan once held herself to: a dedication to craft, to authenticity, and to substance. In his eyes, the boiled water tutorial is symptomatic of a larger problem: the dilution of quality in pursuit of image. His laughter, then, is not just amusement. It's commentary, a subtle critique that resonates far beyond the kitchen. Meanwhile, the public continues to react. Some ridicule, some empathize, and some engage in spirited debates about pricing, taste, and intent. Bloggers write lengthy think pieces dissecting whether $16 for a spice bag is fair. TikTok creators create skits exaggerating the simplicity of the recipe. Twitter explodes with witty one-liners. Memes circulate of Meghan holding a pot, labeled royal water, with captions like "seasoned with privilege." In marketing terms, the tutorial becomes what experts call a polarizing moment. Polarization is a double-edged sword. It drives engagement, creates visibility, and sparks discussion. But it also risks alienating the audience, undermining credibility, and exposing vulnerabilities. And in Meghan's case, the polarizing moment is amplified by her personal history, her celebrity status, and her ongoing public narrative as a former royal trying to define herself independently. The irony is thick. As ever, intended to signal mindfulness and authenticity, is being criticized for a lack of both. A product designed to convey warmth and approachability now conveys oversimplification and misjudged pricing. The brand struggles not because of a lack of intent, but because execution failed to match ambition. And yet, there is a pattern here. Throughout Meghan's post-royal life, attempts to merge personal identity with marketable products have consistently faced scrutiny. The Spiced Cider video is the latest iteration, but it is not an isolated incident. From wellness kits to fashion collaborations, every product is analyzed for authenticity, for price-to-value alignment, and for coherence with her public image. The challenge is structural: navigating a world where visibility is guaranteed but approval is earned through substance. So when the pot of water boiled and Cory Vitiello laughed, it was more than just a moment of humor. It was a reflection of a recurring tension in Meghan Markle's career: aspiration versus execution, image versus reality, celebrity status versus authentic craftsmanship. And therein lies the question for every observer: can it ever survive this scrutiny? Can a lifestyle brand, tied so closely to a public figure's narrative, withstand repeated moments of dissonance between promise and delivery? The answer is uncertain. But one thing is clear: the boiled water moment has etched itself into cultural memory. It represents a tipping point, a tangible example of a brand struggling to reconcile image with reality. And as the online conversation escalates, every new post, every new product, every new video is now viewed through the lens of that moment. It's a cautionary tale for any brand tethered to personality, fame, or narrative. Execution matters as much as concept. Authenticity, even perceived authenticity, cannot be substituted with simplicity alone. And in a world where social media amplifies every misstep, even boiled water can become a symbol of failure or a lesson in humility. As we move forward, we will see how as ever attempts to respond, how Meghan navigates criticism, and how Cory's laughter continues to resonate, not just as humor, but as a subtle reminder of the expectations she once embodied. And as the narrative unfolds, one question hangs over it all. Can the Duchess reconcile her desire for simplicity with the public's demand for substance? Or will each attempt at reinvention meet the same scrutiny that boiled over with a single pot of water? Humor is a weapon. In the world of celebrity culture, it is a force that can elevate, dismantle, or completely redefine public perception. And for Meghan Markle, the Spiced Cider tutorial became the perfect recipe for ridicule, a dish seasoned with irony, overcooked by social media, and served with a garnish of cultural commentary. The setup was deceptively simple. Meghan stood in her California kitchen, a space meticulously designed to project warmth, sophistication, and approachability. The countertops gleamed under soft lighting, mugs were strategically placed, a vase of fresh flowers brightened the corner, and the As Ever logo subtly reminded viewers of the brand behind the tutorial. There was a sense of intimacy, as though she was inviting the audience into a moment of domestic tranquility. "All you have to do is boil some water," she said, smiling gently. The line was calm, unassuming, and utterly innocent. It could have been a warm gesture, a nod to the simplicity of life, a reminder that even small actions can bring comfort. But the internet has a different sense of humor. And in the digital age, nothing is too sacred to become satire. Almost immediately, viewers latched onto the absurdity. Memes proliferated. Twitter exploded. Influencers stitched TikToks, exaggeratedly pretending to add boiling water to mugs, mimicking Meghan's soft-spoken cadence. $16 for water became a rallying cry. Animated GIFs of cats pawing at empty teacups, champagne bottles labeled Royal Water, and Photoshopped potions titled Liquid Gold spread across platforms. The humor was sharp, biting, and unrelenting. Why did it resonate so powerfully? Because it tapped into the cultural zeitgeist. Meghan Markle, a figure whose life is closely followed and meticulously documented, had taken a simple act, boiling water, and framed it as a luxury experience. The contrast between intention and execution created a perfect storm for ridicule. People are naturally drawn to irony, especially when it involves wealth, fame, and the perceived gap between image and reality. But there's a deeper layer here. Humor, especially public mockery, often carries an undercurrent of social commentary. The boiling water tutorial wasn't just funny because it was simplistic, it was funny because it symbolized dissonance. Meghan, once admired for authenticity and relatability, now seemed to be performing simplicity, not embodying it. The act of boiling water became a metaphor for a brand struggling to maintain credibility while projecting effortless luxury. Cory Vitiello's reaction adds another dimension to this narrative. As a chef, he understands the principles of flavor, technique, and culinary integrity. He also knew Meghan personally, sharing years of her life before fame and royal duties reshaped her world. When he reportedly laughed at the tutorial, it wasn't mere schadenfreude, it was recognition. Recognition that the tutorial represented a departure from the authenticity and craft that once defined Meghan's approach to life, and, yes, even to cooking. This laughter is crucial to understanding the ripple effect of the video. While the general public mocked the product, Cory's amusement carried weight. It became a talking point precisely because it wasn't performed for social media, it was genuine. The ex-boyfriend, the chef who knew her best, found the simplicity laughable, reinforcing the public perception that the tutorial was misguided. The ridicule intensified because of the pricing. $16 for a small spice bag, a cinnamon stick, and a bit of honey seemed disproportionate to the perceived value. Critics highlighted the disparity between cost and content. Blogs dissected the economics. Influencers made videos comparing the kit to standard kitchen staples. Even casual viewers joined the conversation, debating whether the product offered anything more than a pot of boiled water. Social media's reaction also reflected broader cultural conversations about celebrity branding and authenticity. People are increasingly skeptical of products tied to personalities. When a lifestyle brand promises wellness, luxury, or empowerment, consumers expect substance, not performance. The Spiced Cider tutorial, in highlighting minimal effort, inadvertently confirmed suspicions that celebrity brands sometimes prioritize image over quality. And yet, there's an important nuance. Humor isn't purely destructive. Ridicule, when managed effectively, can be reframed as engagement, as visibility, as an opportunity to pivot. In theory, Meghan could have leaned into the humor, acknowledged the absurdity, or used it as a teaching moment. But execution is everything in such situations, and initial reactions matter. The first wave of social media mockery set the tone for subsequent discussions, creating a narrative difficult to reverse. Let's consider the psychological mechanics behind the ridicule. People love stories of discrepancy, the gap between expectation and reality, perception and performance. Meghan's tutorial provided the perfect example. Viewers expected a spiced cider recipe worthy of its name. They expected something seasonal, comforting, and flavorful. Instead, they got boiled water and a tea-like steeping bag. The cognitive dissonance created humor, and the humor quickly escalated into viral commentary. Moreover, the cultural context amplified the reaction. Meghan Markle is a high-profile figure whose actions are scrutinized continuously. Every post, every product, every statement is filtered through lenses of fame, royalty, and celebrity culture. The boiling water tutorial was less about culinary technique and more about symbolic alignment, or misalignment, with public expectation. The audience's laughter reflected not only the absurdity of the product, but also broader societal attitudes towards celebrity entrepreneurship, authenticity, and privilege. Yet, the ridicule wasn't limited to public forums. Industry insiders, food bloggers, and culinary critics began weighing in. Some dissected the recipe itself, highlighting how the omission of actual cider undermined the authenticity of the product. Others examined the branding strategy, questioning whether simplicity had been miscommunicated as a virtue. Every critique, every commentary, every meme reinforced the narrative that Meghan's tutorial was emblematic of a larger gap between brand promise and execution. Cory's laughter, however, remained unique. Unlike social media mockery, which can be performative, detached, or opportunistic, his reaction carried emotional resonance. He wasn't commenting as an outsider. He wasn't engaging for likes or virality. He laughed because he recognized the dissonance firsthand. The tutorial, in a way, was a reflection of change, personal change, professional change, and the evolution of someone he once knew intimately. This adds complexity to the story. Public ridicule is often shallow, fleeting, and disposable. Personal critique, particularly from someone with a shared history, carries weight, credibility, and emotional nuance. It transforms a moment of humor into a subtle commentary on identity, transformation, and authenticity. And yet, the public continued to amplify the ridicule. Social media thrives on repetition. Memes were shared, videos remixed, and parodies proliferated. The Spiced Cider tutorial became shorthand for performative simplicity, a cultural touchstone representing the disconnect between aspiration and reality. Every share, every comment, every reaction reinforced the narrative. The recipe for ridicule, then, is not simply in the product itself. It is in the convergence of expectation, celebrity, authenticity, and cultural scrutiny. Meghan Markle, by boiling water and labeling it spiced cider, unintentionally provided a perfect storm of elements ripe for public commentary. The humor, while seemingly trivial, is deeply rooted in these dynamics, reflecting societal perceptions of image, value, and credibility. And therein lies the lesson. In the world of high-profile brands, especially those tied to personal narrative, every action, every product, and every statement is magnified. A simple tutorial about spiced cider can become a symbol of authenticity or its absence. It can spark laughter, debate, and scrutiny that extends far beyond the kitchen. In the world of culinary arts, chefs are storytellers. They communicate through flavor, aroma, and texture, transforming raw ingredients into experiences that linger in memory long after the meal is over. Cory Vitiello, a Toronto-based chef with a reputation for precision and creativity, understood this better than most. But in the viral saga of Meghan Markle's spiced cider tutorial, Cory's story is not about the food itself. It's about the insight he carries as someone who intimately knew the woman behind the video, and the stark contrast between past authenticity and present performance. To understand the significance of Cory's reaction, we need to rewind to the days before Meghan was a duchess, before lifestyle brands, before viral critiques. Back then, She was an actress building her career in North America, best known for her role on Suits. She was ambitious, intelligent, and deliberate. But in her personal life, she sought grounding, connection, and a sense of domestic normalcy. Things she found with Cory Vitiello. Cory wasn't royalty. He wasn't a media magnate. He was a chef, passionate about food, craft, and the intimate spaces where creativity meets care. Their relationship was described by insiders as thoughtful, collaborative, and deeply personal. Meghan, even in the midst of career ambitions, spent hours in Cory's kitchen, learning, experimenting, and laughing. It was a world far removed from red carpets, press scrutiny, or curated social media feeds. That background is critical because it frames the significance of the Spiced Cider tutorial. For someone like Cory, who prizes substance and authenticity, the video was jarring. It wasn't the act of boiling water that struck him, it was the symbolism. Meghan, once meticulous in her approach to both food and public presentation, was now presenting a product that seemed underdeveloped, superficial, and misaligned with her personal brand. Reports claim Cory howled with laughter upon seeing the tutorial. Not in a mean-spirited way, but in recognition of the gap between who Meghan once was and what the video represented. It was laughter born from disbelief, nostalgia, and, perhaps, a touch of sadness. He knew the woman who meticulously tested recipes, who understood the science of flavor, who appreciated the artistry in subtlety. Watching her present a spice bag and boiled water as a $16 seasonal luxury kit was, in his eyes, absurd. But Cory's laughter wasn't just personal, it became symbolic. In the viral narrative, it illustrated a unique dynamic. The former partner who had a window into Meghan's past, witnessing a transformation that the public was now critiquing. Unlike casual viewers, Cory's amusement carried context. He knew her standards, her skills, and her dedication. He could see the disparity between intention and execution more clearly than anyone. This insight makes Cory a pivotal figure in the story. He represents the measured, informed voice amid the cacophony of social media commentary. While memes, tweets, and parodies spread, his laughter functioned as a subtle critique from someone with credibility, someone who knew the stakes, someone who understood the ingredients of authenticity. It also highlights the tension between public persona and private history. Meghan's current image, meticulously curated through Instagram posts, lifestyle branding, and public appearances, exists in a vacuum to most audiences. Viewers interpret actions without context, relying on their perceptions, assumptions, and biases. But Cory's perspective is grounded in intimacy and experience. He isn't responding to a video clip as a celebrity observer. He is responding to someone he once knew intimately, someone whose current representation conflicts with the reality he experienced firsthand. To further understand the weight of his reaction, we must explore his culinary philosophy. Cory Vitiello is known for meticulous technique, seasonal ingredients, and depth of flavor. He values authenticity in every dish, emphasizing that even simple recipes must respect the ingredients and the process. In this light, the boiling water tutorial is not just amusing, it's antithetical to the principles he holds dear. A dish with minimal effort, framed as luxury, undermines the craft he cherishes. Moreover, Cory's laughter carries cultural significance. In a society increasingly skeptical of celebrity brands, personal endorsements, or critiques matter. When someone with culinary authority, a history of authenticity, and personal insight into Meghan's character reacts so viscerally, it amplifies the public narrative. It transforms what might have been dismissed as playful commentary into a credible critique. And there's another layer, the emotional resonance. Cory's amusement is intertwined with memory. He remembers the quiet evenings cooking together, the jokes, the experiments with flavors, and the shared pride in small successes. That history contrasts sharply with the performative nature of the tutorial. Watching Meghan, now a public figure and lifestyle entrepreneur, boil water for a product tied to her brand, likely evoked a mixture of nostalgia, disbelief, and mild exasperation. It's also important to recognize that Cory's laughter was not intended to harm. It was personal, authentic, and private initially. But in the age of leaks, social media amplification, and viral journalism, such private reactions inevitably become public fodder. Once reported, His laughter became a narrative device, reinforcing the online ridicule and highlighting the human, relational dimension behind the cultural spectacle. This dynamic underscores a critical point about celebrity culture. Past relationships, shared histories, and intimate knowledge can significantly shape public perception when brought into the conversation. Cory's perspective adds depth to the conversation, reminding audiences that the image presented online is often incomplete, polished, and curated. His laughter is a bridge between past reality and present representation. From a broader perspective, Cory's reaction also reflects the challenge of maintaining authenticity while navigating public expectations. Meghan's brand as a lifestyle entrepreneur relies on relatability, warmth, and perceived genuineness. The Spiced Cider tutorial, however, exposed a vulnerability. When simplicity is misinterpreted as laziness, the illusion of authenticity can crumble. Cory's amusement is emblematic of this tension, signaling that even those closest to her can see when intention and execution are misaligned. Furthermore, Cory's role illuminates the intersection of personal relationships and public scrutiny. In celebrity culture, every intimate detail has the potential to become public narrative. An ex-partner's reaction, once private, gains symbolic weight when shared with the world. Cory's laughter is no longer just amusement. It becomes a lens through which audiences interpret the brand, the tutorial, and Meghan's broader post-royal trajectory. The implications are profound. The Spiced Cider video, while seemingly trivial, became a nexus of humor, critique, and relational insight. Cory's reaction anchors this story in reality, providing context, credibility, and emotional resonance. It reminds us that public perception is rarely formed in isolation. It is informed by history, relationships, and lived experience, all of which converge in moments of visibility. In the end, Cory Vitiello represents more than just a former partner or a culinary authority. He embodies the standard of authenticity Meghan once adhered to, the groundedness of a personal past, and the honest perspective of someone who saw her without filters, cameras, or branding considerations. His laughter, while simple on the surface, carries layers of meaning, connecting humor to history, critique to intimacy, and personal experience to public perception. And as the narrative unfolds, it becomes clear that Cory's laughter is just the beginning. It sets the stage for subsequent reactions, conversations, and revelations that will challenge perceptions, test the brand, and expose vulnerabilities in ways that no viral video alone could achieve. In today's digital age, nothing exists in a vacuum. A single moment, a glance, a statement, or, in this case, a pot of boiling water, can trigger a chain reaction that spans continents, social media platforms, and news outlets. Meghan Markle's Spiced Cider tutorial, with its deceptively simple premise, became exactly that kind of moment. The initial ridicule sparked by her presentation of boiled water and a spice bag didn't just simmer, it boiled over. The internet, as it always does, struck back with full force, amplifying the humor, the criticism, and the cultural commentary to levels few could have predicted. It started with memes. Within hours of the video's release, social media users had transformed the simple act of boiling water into a global punchline. Images circulated depicting Meghan standing triumphantly over a pot, labeled liquid gold or royal water. GIFs illustrated her pouring water into mugs with exaggerated elegance, while captions mocked the simplicity of the recipe. TikTok creators staged dramatic reactions, feigning shock and disappointment as they recreated the tutorial with humorous exaggeration. The reactions were immediate, widespread, and, in many cases, viciously clever. People poked fun not only at the tutorial itself, but at the broader cultural implications. Critics pointed out that the spiced cider lacked its titular ingredient entirely: no cider, no apples, no rich autumnal flavors. The product, which was meant to symbolize warmth, comfort, and authenticity, instead highlighted a gap between brand promise and reality. But memes alone weren't enough to sustain the viral momentum. Influencers and content creators joined the conversation, dissecting the tutorial with comedic precision. Some analyzed it step by step, exaggerating each motion, each spoken word, for maximum effect. Others compared it to more traditional mulled cider recipes, highlighting what was missing: the essence of cider itself. Video reactions, some framed as satirical tutorials, others as biting commentary, proliferated across platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. The boiling water had become a cultural symbol, a shorthand for performative simplicity. The internet's response wasn't purely about humor. It was also about cultural critique. Meghan Markle, as a public figure, carries layers of expectation. Former royal, celebrity, activist, entrepreneur. Each role comes with scrutiny, assumptions, and preconceptions. The boiled water tutorial collided with these expectations in unexpected ways. People weren't just laughing at the recipe, they were critiquing the perceived gap between her brand image and her actions. In many eyes, a former duchess presenting boiled water as a $16 luxury item was the perfect illustration of performative lifestyle branding gone awry. Twitter, of course, was the epicenter of this backlash. Tweets flooded in with witty one-liners, GIF reactions, and commentary dissecting every detail. Some posts mocked the pricing, calling it $16 for a cup of disappointment. Others highlighted the lack of cider, dubbing the drink water with aspirations. Hashtags emerged, humorously framing the narrative for wider participation. Hashtag boiled water crisis. Hashtag royalty fail. Hashtag as ever as never. The viral conversation snowballed, drawing in casual observers, food enthusiasts, lifestyle bloggers, and pop culture commentators alike. Meanwhile, blogs and news outlets weighed in with more structured analyses. Some questioned the economic logic of the product. Could a brand survive selling essentially boiled water packaged as luxury? Others examined the social implications. Was this a failure of marketing, an overreach of celebrity branding, or a symptom of deeper misalignment between Meghan's image and her offerings? The Spiced Cider tutorial had transcended the kitchen. It had become a case study in public relations, consumer perception, and the complexities of celebrity influence. Amid all this, Cory Vitiello's reaction added an extra layer of intrigue. Initially private, his laughter leaked into the public domain, amplifying the ridicule. Unlike the memes, tweets, and parodies, Cory's amusement carried context. He knew Meghan personally, he understood her culinary skills, and he witnessed the transformation from authentic craft to curated simplicity. When the internet caught wind of his reaction, it became a focal point. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about boiled water. It was about someone with first-hand knowledge recognizing a disconnect, and the public eagerly amplified that insight. The online frenzy also reflected a deeper societal dynamic, the tension between celebrity entrepreneurship and consumer expectation. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike are increasingly skeptical of lifestyle brands tied to high-profile figures. When a product promises warmth, luxury, or wellness, audiences expect substance, not performative simplicity. The boiled water tutorial became emblematic of the pitfalls of branding in an era of social media scrutiny, where every action is examined, dissected, and reinterpreted through countless lenses. As the ridicule intensified, it also began to impact Meghan's brand messaging. As ever, designed to communicate authenticity and mindful living, now faced a challenge: how to navigate viral mockery while maintaining credibility. The Spiced Cider tutorial, intended to be approachable and comforting, had instead highlighted vulnerabilities, creating a tension between intended narrative and public perception. This tension manifested not only in online discourse, but in media coverage. Traditional news outlets ran stories examining the tutorial, often juxtaposing the simplicity of the recipe against the luxury positioning of the brand. Headlines ranged from playful satire, royal water, Meghan Markle's $16 hot beverage, to analytical critique, boiled water, and branding. When celebrity lifestyle brands misfire, each article reinforced the narrative that the tutorial was a symbolic failure, amplifying the reach of the internet's ridicule. And yet, in true social media fashion, the narrative evolved rapidly. Audiences began creating content that blended humor with homage. Some TikTok creators staged exaggerated reenactments, pouring water into mugs with solemn reverence. Others combined the tutorial with snippets of Meghan's previous lifestyle content, highlighting contrasts and inconsistencies. The boiling water became both a joke and a cultural artifact, representing a moment when celebrity branding collided with public perception in a way that was both humorous and revealing. Interestingly, the internet's response also highlighted the participatory nature of modern culture. Users didn't just passively consume the tutorial, they engaged with it, remixing, reinterpreting, and reframing the content. The boiled water became a communal touchstone, a shared reference point for humor, critique, and cultural commentary. In this sense, Meghan's tutorial was no longer simply a marketing effort. It had become a catalyst for collective storytelling. Amid the chaos, Cory's role remained central. His laughter, which began as a personal reaction, became a symbol of informed perspective. Whereas memes and parody operate on surface-level humor, Cory's response carries depth, context, and emotional resonance. It bridges the gap between private knowledge and public spectacle, reminding audiences that behind every viral moment lies a human story shaped by history, relationships, and lived experience. The broader lesson of this viral eruption is clear. In the digital age, every action, every video, and every product is magnified exponentially. The boiled water tutorial exemplifies the power of social media to transform ordinary moments into global narratives. It illustrates how humor, critique, and cultural context intersect to create viral phenomena that extend far beyond the original intent. Yet, the story doesn't end with ridicule. The internet, after all, is unpredictable. Moments of mockery often evolve into opportunity, providing visibility, engagement, and even a platform for narrative reclamation. How Meghan and As Ever respond, how Cory's reaction continues to be interpreted, and how audiences process the intersection of humor, critique, and authenticity. All of these elements set the stage for the next chapter of the saga. There is a fine line between elegance and emptiness, between minimalism and mediocrity. In the realm of lifestyle branding, this line can determine the success or failure of a product. Meghan Markle's Spiced Cider tutorial, which at first glance seemed like an innocent embrace of simplicity, revealed just how dangerous that line can be when crossed. What was intended as approachable, warm, and relatable instead backfired spectacularly, exposing vulnerabilities in her brand, her narrative, and her public perception. Simplicity, as a principle, is powerful. Minimalist design, pared-down recipes, and curated experiences are celebrated in culture and commerce alike. The idea is that less can be more. A single, well-chosen element can create depth, sophistication, and resonance. For lifestyle brands, simplicity can communicate mindfulness, accessibility, and intention. But simplicity requires mastery. It demands that the choice to pare down is deliberate, thoughtful, and enhanced by subtlety. It must feel intentional, not accidental. This is where the Spiced Cider tutorial faltered. Boiling water, adding a bag of spices, drizzling a bit of honey, and tossing in a cinnamon stick might technically qualify as simple, but it lacked nuance, depth, and what the culinary world calls craft. The absence of actual cider, a core ingredient, made the recipe feel incomplete, almost performative. Audiences didn't perceive mindfulness. They perceived under-preparation. They didn't see elegance. They saw an oversimplified, overpriced product. The consequences of misapplied simplicity are twofold. First, there is the immediate public reaction, mockery, memes, criticism, and social media uproar. Second, and more insidious, is the long-term impact on credibility and trust. A lifestyle brand thrives on perceived authenticity, expertise, and value. When simplicity is misinterpreted as laziness or lack of knowledge, those foundational elements are undermined. Cory Vitiello's laughter exemplifies this second consequence. As someone intimately familiar with Meghan's standards, he recognized the disparity between intention and execution. His reaction wasn't just amusement. It was an acknowledgement that simplicity had backfired. What might have been charming or relatable in another context became absurd when framed as a luxury product. For audiences aware of this perspective, the humor carried weight, reinforcing perceptions that the tutorial represented a misalignment between brand promise and reality. The public's response illustrates a broader phenomenon in celebrity culture. Simplicity is lauded when it feels authentic, effortless, or aspirational. It fails when it feels contrived, underdeveloped, or misaligned with expectations. Meghan's tutorial fell into the latter category. The act of boiling water, while technically simple, lacked the artistry, context, or added value that might have justified its positioning as a premium offering. Consider the psychology behind audience expectations. When a public figure like Meghan Markle presents a lifestyle product, audiences subconsciously calibrate their expectations based on the persona, the brand, and the context. They anticipate thoughtfulness, skill, and a degree of aspiration. If the product or presentation fails to meet these expectations, cognitive dissonance occurs, resulting in mockery, skepticism, or outright backlash. This is precisely what happened with the Spiced Cider tutorial. The simplicity backfired because it clashed with perceived expertise and narrative credibility. Furthermore, simplicity without story can feel hollow. The most successful minimalist products, whether in culinary arts, design, or lifestyle, tell a story through their restraint. A single, well-prepared ingredient can evoke nostalgia, comfort, or luxury if framed effectively. Meghan's tutorial, however, lacked narrative depth. The boiling water was not contextualized as part of a ritual, a sensory experience, or a mindfulness practice. Without that framing, the product became an object lesson in underwhelming execution. This failure also reflects the tension between approachability and aspiration. Lifestyle brands, particularly those tied to celebrity figures, constantly navigate this balance. They must appear accessible to the average consumer while maintaining a premium, aspirational image. The boiled water tutorial tipped too far toward accessibility, stripping away the aspirational layer that justified the pricing and brand positioning. Audiences interpreted the simplicity not as thoughtful minimalism, but as underdevelopment. The lesson is clear. Simplicity is a double-edged sword. Executed well, it can elevate a brand, communicate mindfulness, and enhance relatability. Executed poorly, it becomes fodder for ridicule, diminishes credibility, and exposes gaps between narrative and reality. For Meghan Markle, a former duchess whose every move is scrutinized, the stakes are even higher. Her brand relies on perception as much as product, and moments like the Spiced Cider tutorial highlight how fragile that perception can be. Simplicity also intersects with pricing expectations. Consumers are willing to pay a premium when simplicity feels intentional, curated, and elevated. A single, high-quality ingredient, thoughtfully presented, can command a higher price point. But when the core offering is boiled water with a spice bag, the pricing appears disconnected from value. This misalignment amplifies the perception that simplicity has backfired, turning what might have been a charming moment into a viral critique. Social media reactions exemplify this dynamic. Memes and commentary focused not only on the act of boiling water, but also on the perceived incongruence between cost and substance. Tweets labeled the tutorial $16 disappointment, while TikTok creators staged dramatic reenactments that exaggerated the mundanity of the process. The humor, biting and relentless, reinforced the narrative that simplicity had gone too far. Moreover, the failure of simplicity extends beyond the tutorial itself. It reflects a broader challenge for Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, translating personal values into tangible products that resonate with audiences. Mindfulness, wellness, and accessibility are abstract concepts. When distilled into a product, they must be enhanced with craft, narrative, and sensory experience. Without these elements, simplicity risks appearing hollow, leaving the audience dissatisfied or incredulous. Cory Vitiello's role remains central in this analysis. As someone who has shared intimate experiences with Meghan, he serves as a touchstone for authenticity. His laughter, grounded in memory and knowledge, underscores the disconnect between intention and execution. It is a subtle reminder that simplicity, while powerful, must be rooted in substance, skill, and thoughtful presentation. The boiled water tutorial, therefore, functions as a case study in the pitfalls of misapplied simplicity. It illustrates how public perception, celebrity scrutiny, and brand expectations intersect to amplify even minor missteps. What might have been a charming, intimate moment instead became a viral critique, highlighting vulnerabilities in execution, narrative alignment, and audience trust. And yet, the story is far from over. While simplicity backfired in this instance, it also set the stage for further exploration of brand resilience, crisis management, and narrative reclamation. Meghan's response, the evolution of as ever, and the continued cultural conversation all hinge on how the fallout from this tutorial is managed. Because in the world of celebrity branding, one misstep, one moment of misaligned simplicity, can trigger a cascade of reactions, both humorous and critical. How Meghan navigates this moment, rebuilds narrative credibility, and addresses audience expectations will define not only the trajectory of As Ever, but also the cultural perception of her post-royal identity. In the modern era of instant communication and global connectivity, a single moment in a kitchen in California can reverberate across continents, cultures, and time zones. Meghan Markle's Spiced Cider tutorial, initially a domestic, seemingly benign product demonstration, quickly transformed into an international phenomenon. What started as a simple video of boiled water and a spice bag became a symbol of celebrity branding missteps, social media virality, and cultural scrutiny on a global scale. The trajectory was dizzying. Within hours of the tutorial's release on Instagram, social media platforms were awash with commentary. Memes proliferated in every language, each adding a local twist. In London, satirical posts depicted Meghan as a royal alchemist, conjuring magic from a pot of water. In Tokyo, TikTok creators dramatized the steeping of spices as a ceremonial ritual, juxtaposed with exaggerated disappointment over the lack of cider. In Sydney, influencers staged mock taste tests, humorously comparing boiled water to traditional mulled cider. The simplicity of the tutorial made it universally understandable and universally mockable. News outlets across the globe seized the story. British tabloids, long fascinated with the lives of former royals, framed the video as both amusing and emblematic of Meghan's entrepreneurial misadventures. Headlines ranged from playful satire, Duchess of Water, Meghan's $16 boil, to pointed critique, celebrity branding gone awry, when simplicity backfires. Media in North America, Europe, and Asia dissected the tutorial, debating its culinary merits, its brand implications, and its cultural resonance. Every article, tweet, and video contributed to the global amplification of what might have otherwise been a niche incident. The internet's response was relentless. The viral nature of the tutorial meant that every new post, meme, or reaction gained exponential reach. Social media users, bloggers, and commentators engaged in a kind of collective storytelling, each iteration adding layers of humor, critique, and cultural interpretation. The boiled water became a global touchstone, a shorthand for perceived misalignment between celebrity branding and audience expectation. Part of the global resonance stems from Meghan's unique position as a public figure. She occupies multiple spheres simultaneously: former Duchess of Sussex, actress, activist, entrepreneur. Her visibility is unparalleled, and her audience is vast and diverse. When a product she promotes is perceived as underwhelming, it doesn't remain a domestic anecdote. It becomes a topic of international conversation, dissected across cultures and languages. Cory Vitiello's role added depth to this international scrutiny. Initially a private reaction, his laughter became a viral talking point, amplifying the tutorial's notoriety. Audiences outside North America quickly learned of his amusement, framing it as a perspective from someone who knew Meghan intimately. This added a layer of credibility and emotional resonance to the global discourse, transforming the story from mere humor to cultural commentary. Global reactions also highlighted cultural differences in perception. In some regions, the tutorial was viewed primarily as comedic content, an amusing quirk of celebrity culture. In others, it sparked debates about value, authenticity, and consumer expectation. Economists, marketing analysts, and lifestyle commentators weighed in, examining pricing, branding strategy, and the disconnect between promise and execution. The boiled water, once mundane, became a symbol of larger structural questions about celebrity influence, lifestyle branding, and global consumer perception. Social media's participatory nature amplified the saga further. Users worldwide contributed to the narrative by creating derivative content, videos, memes, parodies, and satirical tutorials. Each post reinforced and expanded the story, turning a single Instagram video into a global cultural event. The tutorial's simplicity, its one pot, one bag format, made it universally accessible and easy to replicate humorously, which fueled its virality. Interestingly, the global spread of the story also illuminated the pressures of celebrity branding in a hyper-connected world. Every action is scrutinized, every product analyzed, and every perceived misstep magnified. Meghan's Spiced Cider tutorial serves as a cautionary tale. Simplicity, while valuable, can become a liability when amplified by international audiences with diverse expectations, tastes, and cultural contexts. Furthermore, the global conversation revealed the interplay between humor, critique, and cultural symbolism. The boiled water was funny, yes, but it also represented something deeper, a gap between image and reality, expectation and execution, narrative and experience. Audiences around the world recognized this dissonance, whether consciously or intuitively, and responded with humor, satire, and analysis. Cory's laughter, contextualized by insiders, served as a counterpoint to the global frenzy. While memes and parodies operate on surface-level humor, his reaction carried historical and emotional context. He remembered the authenticity Meghan once embodied, the craft she once applied to cooking, and the meticulous care she once brought to culinary projects. His laughter, initially private, became a bridge connecting personal history to public perception, highlighting the human dimension behind the global spectacle. The saga also underscores the power of social media as both amplifier and magnifier. A single post, whether humorous, critical, or banal, can trigger a cascade of global reactions. The Spiced Cider tutorial illustrates how quickly public perception can form, how narratives can spiral, and how cultural interpretation can transform a mundane act into a viral phenomenon. The boiling water, in this context, becomes more than a culinary misstep. It becomes a lens through which audiences explore authenticity, branding, and celebrity culture on a global scale. Yet, the global attention also created opportunities. Virality, even when initially negative, can drive engagement, brand visibility, and conversation. In theory, as ever could have leveraged the moment to clarify its narrative, enhance product storytelling, or connect with audiences through humor and transparency. The tutorial's global reach meant that even criticism carried a silver lining: awareness. The question, of course, is whether that awareness would translate into positive outcomes or further scrutiny. And as the saga unfolded, one thing became clear: the Spiced Cider tutorial was no longer a local or personal moment. It had transcended borders, cultures, and platforms, becoming a symbol of the challenges, risks, and dynamics of celebrity branding.